Listen to that sound. Your dog knows that sound instantly. The ears perk up. The tail starts wagging. They run across the room with complete excitement. And you smile. Because in that moment, you're doing something every loving dog owner does. You're feeding your best friend. But what if one of the most successful industries on Earth depends on a simple assumption? That you'll never look too closely at what's actually inside that bowl. What if the thing millions of owners buy every week isn't exactly what they think it is? What if the labels aren't telling the whole story? And what if the world's most beloved pets have quietly become the perfect customers for a $100 billion industry built on trust? Because the deeper people started investigating the dog food business, the stranger the story became. And once you see it, it's very difficult to look at your dog's bowl the same way again. Think about the last bag of dog food you bought. Maybe you compared protein percentages. Maybe you looked for a premium brand. Maybe you paid extra because you wanted the very best. But here's the question most owners never ask. What exactly does chicken mean on a dog food label? Not what you imagine. What it legally means. Because those can be very different things. And that distinction opens the door to a hidden world most consumers never see. A world built on definitions, regulations, marketing language, and assumptions. The kind of assumptions that allow two bags sitting side by side on the same shelf to tell very different stories than the ones consumers believe they're buying. Most people assume commercial dog food was created because scientists discovered the perfect canine diet. That's not actually how the story began. In the late 1800s, businessman James Spratt noticed stray dogs eating discarded food around shipping docks in England. He saw an opportunity, not necessarily a nutritional breakthrough, a business opportunity. The idea was simple. Create a shelf-stable product that could use inexpensive agricultural leftovers and be sold at scale. And it worked. The modern pet food industry was born. Now, that doesn't automatically mean modern dog food is bad. Not at all. But it raises an important question. If the industry began as a solution for utilizing surplus materials, how much of that mindset still exists today? And that's where things start getting uncomfortable. Walk through any pet store and you'll see words everywhere. Natural, premium, wholesome, wild, ancestral, authentic. These words create images in your mind. Fresh farms, healthy animals, carefully selected ingredients. But the language on the front of the bag often works very differently from the language behind the bag. For example, many owners don't realize that phrases like chicken recipe, chicken formula, with chicken, and chicken flavor can all mean very different things under labeling guidelines. The packaging tells a story. The ingredient definitions tell another. And most consumers never learn the difference. They're buying an image, not necessarily an ingredient list. And that's exactly why marketing has become one of the industry's most powerful tools. Now let's talk about something even more surprising. Processing. Because even if ingredients start out reasonably good, what happens next matters. A lot. Most dry dog foods are produced using a process called extrusion. Ingredients are mixed together, exposed to high heat, high pressure, and then transformed into the uniform kibble pieces we recognize instantly. The process is incredibly efficient. It creates food that can remain shelf-stable for long periods of time, which is one reason manufacturers love it. But critics and researchers have asked an important question. What happens to delicate nutrients during intensive processing? How much survives? And how much has to be added back later? If you've ever looked near the bottom of a dog food ingredient panel and noticed a long list of added vitamins and minerals, there's a reason for that. Again, This doesn't automatically mean danger, but it challenges a common assumption. The assumption that the food in the bag is simply a collection of fresh ingredients preserved in their natural state. The reality is usually much more industrial and much more complex. But here's where this story stops being about food and starts becoming about psychology. Because pet food companies aren't just selling nutrition, they're selling reassurance. Think about it. People love their dogs deeply. Many owners treat them like family. Companies understand this better than anyone. That's why most advertisements don't focus on nutritional science. They focus on emotion, the feeling of being a good dog parent, the fear of making the wrong choice, the desire to provide the best possible life. Once you notice it, you see it everywhere. The industry isn't simply selling food, it's selling peace of mind. And that's powerful. Because when love enters the equation, humans evaluate information differently. Love makes us trust. Love makes us hope. Love makes us spend. And every major industry understands that. Now think about your own dog. Have they ever struggled with recurring skin issues, digestive problems, constant scratching, chronic ear infections? Maybe not. Maybe your dog is perfectly healthy. But millions of owners have experienced something strange. They switch foods, and suddenly things improve. The scratching decreases, the digestion stabilizes, the energy comes back. Why? Because food isn't just calories. Every ingredient interacts with a living biological system. And for many owners, the first sign something deserves attention doesn't come from reading an investigation. It comes from watching their dog every day, until eventually they start asking questions. Questions they never thought to ask before. Here's the biggest myth in the industry. The expensive bag must automatically be the better bag, right? Not necessarily. Some premium foods are excellent. Others are exceptional marketing. And most owners have no practical way to tell the difference. Because unlike buying food for yourself, you're making decisions for someone who can't explain their experience. Your dog can't review the product, can't describe how they feel, can't tell you whether the advertising was honest. They trust you completely, which creates one of the strangest consumer relationships on earth. You're purchasing products for a family member who can never directly verify your decision. And that makes transparency more important than ever. The first realization is this. The biggest danger may not be a specific ingredient. It may be blind trust. Because once consumers stop asking questions, transparency becomes optional, and industries rarely volunteer more information than necessary. The second realization is even more important. Most dog owners are not making bad decisions. They're making decisions with incomplete information. That's very different. People can only choose from what they know, and many never realize how much of the system remains invisible. But the final realization changes everything. This story was never just about dog food. It's about an ordinary person standing in front of a shelf, trying to make the best decision possible, surrounded by marketing, conflicting experts, complex labels, and billion-dollar corporations. The dog food aisle is simply one place where that battle becomes visible. Your dog gives you something rare: their loyalty, their trust, their companionship, their love, every single day. And every owner wants to do right by them. That's why this conversation matters. Not because every product is dangerous, not because panic helps anyone, but because awareness changes perception. Once a hidden layer becomes visible, it never becomes completely invisible again. And maybe asking better questions is one of the most important things a dog owner can do. So here's my question. What was the moment that made you start questioning your dog's food? Was it a health issue, A confusing label? A recommendation from a vet? Or do you think the entire controversy is overblown? Let me know in the comments. Because the answers people give often reveal something much bigger than food itself. And if companies can influence decisions through trust, emotion, and psychology, then the next question becomes impossible to ignore. What other things has your dog been trying to communicate every single day that you've completely misunderstood? Because once you learn to recognize those signals, you may never look at your dog the same way again.